You walk through the crumbling ruins of downtown DC. As you attempt to pass through the rubble, you are attacked by super mutants. After managing to pass through the disturbance, you hear noises nearby. It sounds like you are not the only one that the super mutants are attacking, so you decide to check it out. Eventually, you run into a small group wearing power armor. One of them, who seems to be the leader, says to you,
"Look, I don't know who you are, but you don't belong here. The super mutants have overrun our brothers at the Galaxy News radio building, and we're headed there to back them up. You can tag along if you want, but keep your head down and try not to do anything stupid."
Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Fiction. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 3. More specifically, which of the two groups in the Capital Wasteland are the most accurate representation of the faction. To do this, we will need to discuss several things. The history of the Brotherhood of Steel. More specifically, how and when did they get to the Capital Wastelands, what they did in the Capital Wastelands, and what led to the schism. Next, we need to discuss the values of the Brotherhood of Steel. More specifically, what the values of the Brotherhood of Steel are under Elder Lion, what the Outcasts value, and the original Brotherhood of Steel's values, and what the current values are of the Brotherhood of Steel. So, we should now begin with the history of the Brotherhood of Steel. We begin in the year 2254, over in the Lost Hills bunker base of the Brotherhood, over in Southern California. Here, the ruling council would decide to send a group over to the East Coast. The purpose of this being to recover any and all advanced technology from the cities and bases in the East Coast. In this group, we would see several important members being sent on the long journey to the other side of the American wastelands. These being Star Paladin Owen Lyons, who was placed in charge of the team, Scribe Reginald Rothschild, who was to act as Lyons and the group's technical advisor. There would also be several paladins that would come along on this trip, including Henry Kasdan and Ishmael Ashur. This group would set off, finally arriving in the Capital Wastelands in the year 2255. After they arrived, they would set up a base in the site that would have been formerly known as the Pentagon. This would become known as the Citadel. Now, originally, this was not supposed to be a permanent base of operations. However, with the discovery of Liberty Prime, their orders would change. They would be ordered to set up a permanent base of operations there and see what other hidden gems the city had to offer when it came to technology. After setting up this base, they would have their eyes set on nearby targets, one of these being on the former city of Pittsburgh, now not so lovingly known as the Pit. So in the year 2255, a one-night operation would be launched to recover technology and to cleanse the Pit, as this former city was a toxic ruin of its former glory. Before entering the Pit, the Brotherhood did surveillance of the city, realizing that they would be outnumbered and outgunned, and that this mission would perhaps be this team's most dangerous mission yet. After the recon, they would establish a plan to go through the Pit in one night only, recovering any technology they could grab and destroying what they couldn't. Here, they would achieve several things. The Brotherhood would manage to rescue 20 children who were not yet affected by the toxins of the Pit, taking them away from the city to raise them as their own. We see the last remaining one of these being Paladin Kodiak.
Now that's a story. The only reason I'm here is because of Elder Lyons. You see, I grew up in the Pit. Don't suppose you ever been there, huh?
The others being placed on other assignments throughout the wastelands. The Brotherhood would also manage to collect many old world pieces of technology. However, in the destruction of the Pit, they would also lose one of their own. He would be the only casualty of that night, this being in an explosion in the mill. One of the paladins, Ishmael Ashur, was buried under the rubble and assumed dead. They left without checking, leaving his body there. The mission to cleanse the Pit was seen as brazen and led to Lyons being admired by the paladins he had led. But admiration will only get you so far. The Brotherhood would return to the Citadel, where Lyons would be promoted to Elder. Soon after, he would realize that there was an issue in the Capital Wastelands. This appeared in the form of super mutants, who were running rampant throughout the ruins of DC. These super mutants were unlike any that they had seen previously in the West Coast, this suggesting that some other force was causing the super mutants in the Capital Wastelands to appear, rather than the wandering of the Master's former mutants. So this would lead to Elder Lyons making his own decisions about what needed to be done in the Capital Wastelands, this being the attempted eradication of the super mutant issue. The original plan to find and recover the old world technology in the Wastelands was mostly forgotten about, with the assisting of the people we see the Brotherhood joining in on several projects in the Capital Wastelands, one of these being Project Purity. The Brotherhood of Steel would provide protection for the scientists whilst they attempted to get the water purifier running. However, after some time, we would see Lyons becoming frustrated with the lack of progress in getting the project off the ground, so he would withdraw the Brotherhood's support. This would lead to Project Purity fully failing in July 2258, and with this failure, along with the death of the lead scientist's wife, Catherine, it would lead to Elder Lyons sending a paladin to help transport James, the Lone Wanderer's father, along with the infant version of the Lone Wanderer, all the way to Vault 101 to keep them safe. We would also see another of the alliances being that with Rivet City, the city on an old ship. This is where many of the new recruits would come from, including a paladin we would see in Fallout 4, this being Paladin Dance. In 2272, yet another alliance would be formed. This would be between Three Dog at the Galaxy News radio station and the Brotherhood. In exchange for the Brotherhood providing him protection and technological assistance, Three Dog would spread the word about the Brotherhood. Yes, this was a source of propaganda for the Brotherhood of Steel. As time would go on, Elder Lyons would become more and more obsessed with the super mutant problem. And with his obsession, the actual mission he was sent here for would become a thing of the past. Those who had once admired him for his bravery during the Scourge of the Pit started to see him as someone who was working to destroy the Brotherhood of Steel, rather than stand for its values.
When I came here, I realized for the first time that the Brotherhood's technology could truly save the survivors in this wasteland. I chose to help them, even if it meant putting the Brotherhood's interests at risk. Some of my soldiers called me a hero. Others called me a traitor.
As Elder Lyons would constantly ignore the request from the Lost Hills headquarters to recover technology, from Fort Independence being one of these occasions, which was a pre-war military base. This would lead to others inside of the Capital Brotherhood to take action. Many of the Paladins would go against the orders of Elder Lyons in 2276. They were led by Paladin Henry Kasdan, the dissenting group taking much of the weapons that the Brotherhood had stockpiled inside of the Citadel. This was Elder Lyons' largest loss of men in the 23 years he had been fighting the super mutants inside of the Capital Wastelands. The deserters, under the command of Paladin Kasdan, would take over Fort Independence, becoming named the Outcasts by the remaining members of Lyons' group of Brotherhood of Steel. Rather than seeing this as an insult, the group took this name with honor and began referring to themselves as such, painting their power armor red to distinguish themselves from the Brotherhood they used to serve. They would use their newfound freedom from Lyons as a way to scout and recover old world technology. They hoped that they would be able to reunite with the Western Brotherhood faction after they regrouped and strengthened themselves. Considering that they left the Brotherhood group under the control of Lyons weakened, without much needed tools, they would not face any opposition from them. Elder Lyons would continue his mission against the super mutants rather than following orders sent by the leaders of the Brotherhood. But the Brotherhood of Steel in the Lost Hills bunker were also not pleased with his actions, finding his behavior disrespectful. Because of this, they would stop sending reinforcements, and by 2277, all communication with Elder Lyons and the Lost Hills bunker would be cut, leaving Elder Lyons and his group to fend for themselves. Also in the year 2277, Elder Lyons would encounter the Lone Wanderer, the child of the scientists they helped to get to safety, thus triggering their assistance with Project Purity again, and also leading to the Enclave being taken down by the Brotherhood under Elder Lyons' guidance. Now that we know the story of the Brotherhood in Fallout 3, we should discuss more about who are the important characters that we see in the Brotherhood of Steel within the Capital Wasteland. For this, we should of course begin with the leader of the Brotherhood in the Capital Wastelands, this being Owen Lyons. Elder Owen Lyons is one of the few leaders of the Brotherhood to move away from the isolationist policies, and actually desire to help the people of the Wastelands. We see this with the Schism. Many of those in the Brotherhood oppose the idea of assisting the locals. We even see this with his acknowledgement when asked about the Outcasts.
The dissenters left my command, calling themselves Outcasts, to mock me. I cannot fault their dedication. even if I find them lacking in compassion.
Lyons can be seen as a compassionate and sympathetic man, considering he consistently put the needs of those in the wastelands above his own, and also putting those needs first before considering the orders of the leadership back at the Lost Hills bunkers. This, of course, would cause him to lose much support, but he would still have his own loyal following within the small group that stayed. An example of this is scribe Reginald Rothschild. Reginald Rothschild could be considered to be an expert in both robotics and science. We see this with both his work on Liberty Prime, but also on his rather interesting previous work, this being with Star Paladin Cross. What you may have noticed about her is she is in fact technically a cyborg, this being due to an operation that scribe Rothschild performed on her to save her life, after an injury that they thought would actually kill her. Although Rothschild does not exactly agree with Lyons, he is loyal to him, even though he was concerned about violating orders the Brotherhood leaders gave. We do see this disagreement with comments he made about Elder Lyons not liking his opinions on the Brotherhood.
I'm afraid you're asking the wrong person. Predominantly because the Elder won't like some of what I have to say.
Moving on to the next in line, when it comes to the leadership of the Brotherhood of Steel in the Capital Wastelands, we have Sentinel Sarah Lyons. Now, Sarah Lyons is the daughter of Elder Lyons. She is also the leader of the Lyons Pride, which is the elite squad that we see during various firefights. Sarah was actually part of the original trip from the Lost Hills bunker to the Capital Wastelands. She would have been a toddler at the time of this mission. Sarah Lyons is loyal to her father. She is also a very talented soldier. We see the same with her soldiers that she handpicks to work alongside her. However, unlike her father, she lacks the ability to thoroughly plan out attacks, often wishing to launch into conflict without all necessary information. We see this with her desire to retake Project Purity prior to the Lone Wanderer returning.
All I'm saying is, the longer we sit here, the more time they have to shore up their defenses. We should hit them sooner rather than later.
We barely have the manpower to keep the Citadel fortified. We've been over this before, Sarah.
So we just wait until they decide we're next on the list? If the Pride goes in now, we might have a chance.
She also feels the same way about the Outcasts. However, her father does not see a shoot first, ask questions later as a wise approach to battle. Speaking of Outcasts, we should move on to Henry Kasdan. Now, the name Henry Kasdan may or may not be familiar, as he is not a face we see wandering around the Citadel base. But why is this? Was he a casualty in one of the many bloody battles against the super mutants? Or did he return to the West Coast to report? Or did he desert the Brotherhood due to his and several others growing unrest with the decisions of Lyons? If you guess C, he deserted, then you would be correct. Former Paladin Kasdan would desert the Brotherhood during the Schism and would have his name struck off from the Codex along with the others who were seen as abandoning the cause. With this, they would desire to form their own faction, the Outcasts, where Kasdan would lead the group and set out to fulfill the original purpose of the Brotherhood's visit to the Capital Wasteland. Kasdan sees the Outcasts as the true Brotherhood and wishes to re-establish communication with the Brotherhood in the West Coast, in hopes to gain support of their efforts. Now, Henry Kasdan would not be the first in the group to split off and form their own faction. However, Kasdan's decision to do so would be more so about his own choice, rather than a situation he was thrown into, unlike Ishmael Asher. Now, Asher, like Kasdan, is another of the former members of the Brotherhood of Steel to abandon the faction. However, for different reasons. Asher was one of the paladins that attended the Scourge, the fight at the pit. He, however, was abandoned there, this being due to him being believed to be dead. This was after an explosion and rubble pinning him and knocking him out, so he was left rather than retrieving his body. Now, after Asher would awaken in the pit, he would have a change of heart when it comes to the beliefs of the Brotherhood he once religiously followed.
See, beneath it all, the Brotherhood's just lazy. It's easier to loot a dying city than to work to bring it back to life. So that's what they did. They're so obsessed with the technology of the past, they don't care what needs to be done for today and tomorrow.
Rather than seeing them as a group to look up to and aspire to rejoin, he saw their looting and abandoning of the pit. His education from the Brotherhood allowed him to lead the people of the pit. He, unlike Kasdan, would see how the technology could be used within the local area. However, with how he treated the people there, being much crueler and only seeing them as a way to fulfill his needs and desires, rather than to help those that were living in the region, like Elder Lions. Now that we know about the important characters, what are the values we see the Brotherhood under Lions having? The Brotherhood under Elder Owen Lions are more compassionate than the Outcasts.
Only in a very broad sense. The Brotherhood's oaths are to protect humanity's progress, but not necessarily every human. The Outcasts and members of the Brotherhood in other places consider it a waste to protect most people. After all, they say, everyone knows how to make another human, but the secrets to making a P-94 plasma rifle are all but lost.
Their work led to the beginning of the Restorers era of the Brotherhood of Steel. The Brotherhood under Lions would rededicate themselves to advancing humanity rather than protecting humanity from its former selves by gatekeeping old world technology. We also see the isolationist beliefs relaxing in their recruitments. Previously under Max in II's direction, only those who were born into the Brotherhood could be part of the Brotherhood. However, we see with Lions taking on the 20 children from the pit, as well as the recruitment of Wastelanders, this is a rule that he no longer follows. This does lead to some unrest within the Brotherhood members who were born into this faction. This being due to the new recruits being poorly trained and not having the same discipline as those who grew up in the faction. This also leads to more casualties within battles as these initiates were sent in unprepared due to the growing concern caused by both the Enclave and the super mutant issue. We see this with the death of Initiate Redden over at Galaxy News Radio.
She died well. In the end, that's all that really matters.
With these members of the Brotherhood seeing it as honourable and more of the best outcome possible to die in battle for the cause. So they more value the protection of people rather than the hiding away and the hoarding of technology at all costs. We see this being rather different from the Outcasts. So who are the Brotherhood Outcasts? Well, the Outcasts are a faction that have split off from Lion's version of the Brotherhood of Steel. This splinter faction split off due to differences in beliefs and values. However, this was not actually originally the plan. The initial plan was to raise their concerns about the altruistic behaviour being against the values of the Brotherhood of Steel, and their desires to follow through on the orders of the Lost Hills bunker, which this was supposed to be discussed with Elder Lions, with Paladin Kasdan raising the group's concerns. During the discussion, Kasdan realised that discussing with Lions would merely get them nowhere. So it was better if they were to part ways, and to start their own, following what they believed were the Brotherhood's values, but with some major changes. The group would strip away parts of the hierarchy, and do away with the titles that were so prominent within the Brotherhood. The Outcasts no longer used terms like Knight, Paladin, and Scribe, instead using terms like Defender, Protector, and Specialist. The Defenders being the term they used to describe regular soldiers, Protectors being what they called those in leadership positions like Henry Kasdan, and Specialists being those who would be a scientist or an engineer, this essentially being the Outcasts' answer for a scribe. As a way to bulk up their members, the Outcasts also utilize robots in their armies. We see this in the form of Protectrons, Robobrains, and Sentry bots. This is due to their adherence to Max in II's isolationist policies, preventing outsiders from joining the Brotherhood. So as a group, they use technology as a replacement for soldiers rather than hide it away. The Outcasts spending their time gathering technology in an attempt to find a way to rejoin the Brotherhood of Steel, well, those who they see as the real Brotherhood of Steel. This being those located at the Lost Hills bunker over on the west coast. The Outcasts value loyalty. With this, we see them using the threat of treason and execution as a way of preventing members from rejoining the Brotherhood under Lion or even reminiscing about their time there. But are the Outcast values similar to the original values of the Brotherhood of Steel? Well, the original values of the Brotherhood of Steel are known as the Traditionalist values. These are the values that were imposed by the first High Elder Roger Maxon. These values are in place prior to the first Fallout game. However, considering that the first High Elder would pass away from cancer prior to the Vault Dweller exiting the Vault, this is when we would have a change into the Preservationist era. The Brotherhood Outcasts follow more of a Preservationist style of values rather than the Lions group creating their own hybridization of the Traditionalist values mixed with the new values. But anyway, back to the original values. the original values or traditionalist values come from the aftermath of the Great War. The Brotherhood of Steel in the initial years after the Great War would act as more of a fighting force, protecting those who they encountered, but Elder Roger Maxson would eventually realize that all of the knowledge that humanity had gathered prior to the war was destined to be lost without intervention. This intervention would come from the Brotherhood of Steel. Roger Maxson viewed the faction as the guardians of civilization, believing that they had the opportunity to become the catalyst for the rebirth of civilization and humanity. With this, the helping of others outside of the Brotherhood of Steel became a secondary goal, but it was still a concern of the Brotherhood of Steel due to the Brotherhood not having isolationist policies at this time. So with these values, they still recruited members from the outside communities and factions. But what would trigger the Brotherhood's values to change? Well, the values of the Brotherhood of Steel would change when Roger Maxson would pass away, and his son, Maxson II, stepped up to replace him as elder. The values of the Brotherhood would shift to closer to what we see now, with the isolationist policies where the only members of the Brotherhood are those who were born into the group. We also see the shift away from helping others, and the idea of being the guardians of civilization becoming the gatekeepers of civilization. This being the idea that gets people to hoard the technology as part of the Brotherhood of Steel. Due to the introduction of the isolationist policies, we see more of a withdrawal from community support projects and a hoarding of technology within the faction occurring. So who is the most accurate representation of the Brotherhood of Steel? Well, that depends on which version of the Brotherhood you are comparing them to. If we are discussing the original Brotherhood before Maxson II came into power, especially in Roger Maxson's first few years, then the Brotherhood under the guidance of Owen Lyons could be considered to be more of an accurate depiction of the group. Lyons' Brotherhood, those who have been part of the group for a prolonged period of time, are skilled soldiers who are compassionate when it comes to the assisting of the wasteland communities. We see this with their assistance with Project Purity. We also see a redirecting of the original beliefs, with the recruitment drives being in full swing, getting people from both the Pit and Rivet City to fill their ranks. Whereas if you compare this with the Outcasts, the version of the Brotherhood of Steel they more closely resemble is the Preservationists, the era brought in by Maxson II. We see this with the Outcasts' generally low opinion of outsiders, not allowing those in the Wastelands to join their ranks, essentially only having the original deserters and the robot companions as part of their faction. Their refusal to help Wastelanders unless it directly benefits them, this being mainly through a technology trade-in program they have. With these behaviours, we see them definitely resemble the second era of the Brotherhood of Steel, which do not follow the original values of the Brotherhood. So the group under the guidance of Lyons are actually more similar with the original Brotherhood of Steel. So let me know in the comments, do you think that the Outcasts are better, or do you think the Brotherhood under Lyons is better? If you enjoyed this video, then you will enjoy this video. It discusses the origins of the Brotherhood of Steel prior to the first Fallout game and throughout the first Fallout game, along with their values and the structure of their faction.